Good morning, everyone. Happy Vlogmas Day 22. We've just come back from running into the town centre. It's nice and early, so we are going to have a coffee and then I'm going to get started on basting the quilt. I need to hoover the downstairs lounge so that I can lay it out on the floor and then get it spray basted and pinned and then get upstairs and try and get it quilted with the walking foot. Hopefully I can get it quilted and bound today, wishful thinking and all that. But I will catch up with you in a bit once it's basted. Having their morning milk. Right, so the binding is done, the backing is on, so I've gone for this beautiful tulip pink fairy dust in a sort of off-white, which is, well, it's not off-white, it's actually like a very, very soft grey. So yeah, the binding is on. The binding I went for is a Lorry Holt gingham because it's the main background fabrics in the front of it are Lorry Holt, so it just made more sense, and it ties in with the grey tone of the background of the backing fabric. So it is finished. Hurrah! I never want to see this quilt ever again once it's been gifted because it's been driving me up the wall for about 6 months. But I do like it, and I'm hoping that the person that receives it will like it as well. So yeah, it's all quilted. It's got a mixture of different straight line quilting in it. So just very basic, very simple, just to hold it all together. It's got a nice texture on the back of it, which is nice. And I am going to go and roll it up, shove it in the tumble, shove it in the wash machine because it's a bit crunchy. So I'm going to put it in the wash machine with some colour catchers, and then I'm going to chuck it in my dryer so that it all crinkles up and goes nice and snugly, and then I'll fold it up, pack it and wrap it. So I'll catch up with you in a bit with some questions and answers. So I thought I would pop back on and do my questions and answers. I've got quite a few questions through Instagram and I've got a couple through Facebook as well. So my first question is from the Sewing Gardener on Instagram, and she asked me, what is your favourite thread to use when quilting your quilts? And my favourite thread is a combination of two brands. Two, not four, two. And I tend to... It depends on what quilt I'm making, really, and what sort of finish that I want. If I want something that the thread, I want it to sort of pop a little bit more, then I will use a glide thread, which is one of these spools, which is what I normally use. So I use glide 40 weight because this has got more of a sheen to it. It works really, really well at high speed, and I like the finish that you get on it. They also do some glow-in-the-dark ones, which is what I used on my quilt behind me, although it's not had enough sunlight at the moment to charge up the glow factor on it. So yeah, I tend to either use Glide or I use Aurifil 43, which comes on these big spools, and this is 100% cotton, and it's quite thick thread. You can probably see how thick it is. So this is a 3-ply 40 weight, so again it's quite thick, you get good definition. It deals well with being stitched at high speed, which is obviously what I normally tend to use, because I use my Juki TL, which is hidden down there behind my chair, and it just tends not to break because it is a stronger thread. So yeah, those are my thread choices. If I'm hand quilting, I like to use Aurifil Floss or Aurifil 12 weight or Aurifil 28 weight, because you get a really, really nice definition from it, and I quite like the texture that you get from hand quilting with those thicker threads. So the next question I've got is from the lovely Jenny, who is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Her and her sister Sue are an absolute hoot, and she comes to as many of my sewing socials as she can, and she's just one of the best people. She asked me what is my dream car, and my dream car changes from time to time, but I think I would probably go for either a Bentley Continental GT or possibly a Porsche Cayman, which is a lot more achievable if I was to buy a really, really old battered one that needed loads of work doing that I probably couldn't afford to do the work on. So the next question I have is, this is from the Hand-Dyed Stitcher, which I believe is the lovely Lisa, and she asked me, we don't have many hairstylists that go to clients' homes in the US, is that normal? In the UK, it is probably 50-50. Most people that work in salon decide that it's not really beneficial working for a company that will take up to 90% of your earnings, so a lot of hairstylists in the UK do go private, and they attend people's houses and go from house to house on a daily basis. I only do a very, very small handful of clients these days, and it's on a regular rotation of about 8 weeks, and I probably do about 4 out of 8 weeks I'll do a weekend. But obviously at the moment, because of it being Christmas, it's been a lot busier. And Lisa also asked me, what fabric line what made you fall in love with Tula, and where did I meet my hubby? So my hubby I actually met in a bar many, many moons ago, and then we didn't really talk from then onwards, and then a little while later we started talking again, and then one thing led to another, and we ended up together. But the fabric line that made me fall in love with Tula was Curiouser, and Curiouser because I'm a massive Alice in Wonderland lover, and when she did the Alice in Wonderland inspired range, that was what got me hooked. And then from then onwards I backdated and went back into the archive and found as many out of print fabrics as I could, which is how I've ended up with this gargantuan collection, really. So I've also had a lovely question from the Pocket for Two, which is the lovely Danny, who is a good friend of mine. She asked me how I got into sewing. I kind of fell into it, really. So in the first year of secondary school, high school here, you basically get to experiment throughout the term by moving from one sort of technology to another. So you'll do woodwork, you'll do cooking, you'll do textiles, you'll do plastic work, all sorts of different things, graphic design, all of the different sort of things that you possibly could do in that sort of genre. And when I had to do part of the year doing textiles, it just resonated with me, and I was just hooked. So since then I've always sewn, really. And I think the thing is as well, is because it's so beneficial from everyone around you, you get asked to do so many things, like, oh, could you make such and such, or could you fix this, or could you take up the hem on your dad's pants or something. So yeah, it just stuck, and since then I've always sewn, really, since pretty much the age of about 12 or 13. So my other question that I had is from East Quilting Co, which is my lovely friend John, and he asked me, who is my favourite pattern designer and why? I mean, bit of a stupid question, really, isn't it? Because it's going to obviously be East Quilting is the best pattern designer because of this monstrosity behind me. Well, it's not really a monstrosity, it's a absolute work of art in terms of the pattern design on this. So yeah, probably would have to be East Quilting as my favourite pattern designer, because John's method of putting things together just make so much sense. Yes, the cutting takes a little while, but once it's all cut out, laid out, labelled and everything else, it just goes together like the most perfectly curated jigsaw puzzle that you can come across. So if you haven't used one of John's patterns, he has a free pattern on his website, which you can go over to following the link on my description box, and there is a pattern there for a... Oh, he's going to kill me now because I can't remember the name of it. But it is a whale block with water coming out of the top of it, and it is absolutely beautiful. So go and have a look if you want to try out one of John's patterns for free. And then it will teach you all of the sort of skills and steps you'd need to know to make something more involved, like 100 Acre Wood or the Alice in Wonderland or Wizard of Oz or any of the other amazing ones that are on there. So I've got 3 other questions, 2 of which are from my glorious friend Catherine that is over at Soverton Makery. She asked me who taught me to sew, and my first venture into sewing was with school, and I started sewing when I was probably about 11 or 12 in the first year of secondary school, which is our version of high school. And my teacher that I had there was absolutely brilliant. She was so motivational and encouraging, and she taught me to sew, and then I followed with her the whole way through the rest of the school, up to GCSE level, where I sewed a bridesmaid's dress for my final piece. And yeah, I was very, very lucky that I was able to have the same teacher for all 5 years. 5 years, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, yeah, 5 years. She's also asked me if I could eat anything, what would it... Oh, only eat one thing, what would it be? So this is a tough one, because it'd either be anything Japanese, because I love Japanese food, or it would be paella, because I'm not blowing my own trumpet, but I make a mean paella. Even my parents, when they go to Spain and they eat paella there, they always come back and say that they prefer mine to the one that they have in a restaurant in Spain, which is kind of nice to hear. The other question that I have is from the lovely Claire that is Stitch Hemsew, who also is a very good friend of mine. She asked, what is my favourite thing to sew? Now, this is... I'm going to break this down, because if it's quilting, my favourite thing to sew is just an easy scrappy quilt where I can just cut 2.5-inch squares from everything and just piece them together into 9 patches and just have fun, not really having to think much about it, and just being able to just piece together any old scraps of fabric that was laying around just to create something from very, very little, basically. But in garment sewing, my favourite thing to probably sew is shirts, mainly because it's probably... I'm not sure, actually. I like sewing shirts because I like the fact that it is kind of a real process where you get to work through it bit by bit, and there's a lot more sort of complicated parts to it, and there's also some easier parts to it. So like putting in a collar stand and different things like that is a little bit more challenging, and I think that's probably the reason why it's more involved than just making a t-shirt or something. So yeah, if it's quilting, it's probably something simple like a 9 patch where I can just use my scraps, and if it's garment sewing, then it's probably shirts.